we can keep distance, we can wear the masks, we can keep the hygiene. And we know that some of these events that we have, if they are outdoors, if they are not in an indoor setting, especially where the ventilation is not good, we can avoid the transmission. So there's a lot we can do to protect ourselves. There's a lot we can do to protect other people around us. And the other thing we need to know is that the people that are most vulnerable need especially a lot of care. People that are older, and people who have underlying medical conditions tend to get more severe disease. These are the people that are more likely to end up in critical care and also are more likely to die. So we need to take extra precautions to protect these people. And people also that have excess weight, people that are obese, are also among those that are not doing very well. So we need to know, and first of all, do something to keep ourselves healthier, but also to make sure that we protect these people. We love them, and sometimes we go to visit them. We go to visit our mothers who are elderly, and it's going to get worse around Christmas time because people are planning to go back to the village. Many probably haven't been there in a while, but as we go to see them, we might be taking problems to them. So we need to take precautions. We need to forego certain things that we love in the interim as we hold on, hopefully in the next few months, that one might be able to have a vaccine added to the cocktail of interventions. But for now, we just have to work with these tools.
Professor, I want to bring in Brigadier Biekwaso, but before there is a follow-up I wanted you to touch on, a follow-up question. You raised the issue of the vulnerable that must be protected. As a public health expert, I want to task you to give us a bit of education on how, you know, the local ordinary person can handle the vulnerable. And who are you referring to exactly when you talk about the vulnerable? But the second bit of that follow-up is on the question of complacency that I want you to touch on. Uganda is probably, I think, the first or the second youngest population holder. And so the young people think that they can beat COVID. Now, in terms of packaging public information to them, to sensitize them, how do you do it?
So, thank you, Charles, for that. So vulnerable, like I mentioned, we have the older people. If you look at the numbers that we have right now, more than half of the people that have died have been those above 60 years. And then, but you might say that the risk increases with age. But we've also had young people die. We've also had young people die, people in their 20s. About 5 of these people that have died have been people in their 20s. So we can't say that young people are not vulnerable, and they need to be careful as well, because they can get severe disease, they can die, but also some young people are vulnerable because of other conditions, other medical conditions that they might have. So they are not fully protected like we think. But thirdly, you might get mild disease, but then you will get your mother or your father sick who is not as protected, and they will die. And we have had some of these cases where you were asymptomatic or you were mild, but you have got your closest loved one sick, and they haven't been as lucky to make it. And I don't think any of the young people would like to see that. So we need to know that we can break the chain. We can protect ourselves even when we are young. We can break the chain so that we are not transmitting infection to the loved ones around us. Other than the elderly, there are several medical conditions. We are seeing people with very severe disease among those who are hypertensive, and we have a really high prevalence of hypertension in this country, more than 30% of the adults in the population. People with diabetes and people with other chronic respiratory conditions, and many others. And like I mentioned, people that are overweight, people that are obese, especially with abdominal, obesity, they also don't do too well. So there are quite a number of people, people with heart disease, And sometimes we are working with these conditions without knowing, because more than half of the people with diabetes don't know they have it. There are many people that are hypertensive and they don't know. So maybe it's time for us to also check for some of these conditions so that we know and we are able to manage them well, keep them controlled for purposes of preventing COVID, but also for keeping us healthy, because we also have a rising incidence of non-communicable diseases. So there is a lot we can do, and everybody needs to remain vigilant, even the young people.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thanks a lot. Afande Biekwaso, you have heard the scientists have, you know, lined the ground very well. For me as a lay person, I wouldn't do it, you know, better than them. Coming from a security angle, what is your view of the challenge we have right now, and of course coming from what has happened today, causing a lot of, you know, stress to people, to businesses and social life and all that. What is your assessment so far?
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers. So we have the submission of the scientists, like you say, and the challenge that is coming out of COVID. We are seeing it now coming into being now a very big challenge, and creating a very bad situation out of now going into politics, especially, like you said, arising out of what happened today. What happened today is very unfortunate. What happened today is something like the scientists have said that is one of the things that are going to put this country at a very high risk of the pandemic. But it's so disheartening that actually the people who are supposed to be leaders or who are aspiring to become leaders have not appreciated what the country is going through, have not appreciated that we have a pandemic, have not appreciated that business is not the usual business. They have not appreciated that actually for so long, all this time, from the time that the election fever, the election temperature started, we've always talked about scientific elections. And the only reason why we talked about scientific elections, and we debated this a lot, the country debated this a lot, was because of the pandemic. It's very unfortunate also that the other time, before, even when we are talking about scientific, the numbers had not escalated. The numbers we had very few, and that time we had a flat curve. But today we are seeing, like they're saying, that the curve going higher and higher, but you get leaders not responding to this. And failure to respond to this actually is one of the reasons why what happened today happened. And at this point we are saying that we have to protect Ugandans. We as security people and law enforcers, we have no option, and these people are not leaving us option but to make sure that, or to remind them all the time that they have to observe what the scientists are saying. We can do better, we can avoid this pandemic, and we can put it down if we could all oblige and observe the SOPs. It's very good that all of us know, and these people actually know. They've been told by the Electoral Commission, they've been reminded by the Electoral Commission, they've been reminded from time and again. And at this point I can only add and say that if they do not stop, or if this defiance to stop it, because what today is happening is not anything other than just obliging to the SOPs, to make sure that the Ugandans remain healthy, to make sure that the integrity of the country remains intact, because we do not want a safe population. Dr. Diana has already alluded to how this pandemic, if we do not check it, how it's going to overstretch, or how it's already overstretching the doctors. And I'm sure Ugandans know that even before this COVID-19, sometimes the doctors are overwhelmed. They have their ratios, and we usually see the ratio of doctor to patients is quite huge. So if she talks about overstretching, this is something that is, if we let it happen like this and people are falling sick every day, and you actually it's also sucking in them, they are also dying. So definitely the overstretching is going to happen. So as security, we shall make sure that this does not happen.
Now, just before I bring on board Godba and Margaret and Ramadan, a follow-up for you. You said you are going to insist on protecting Ugandans, which is a very good thing to insist on. Because I think that you, as security, yes, you have one of your roles is to protect, and responsibilities is to protect life and as security, and ensure that life is not lost. But don't you think that you now have a real big challenge on your hands, seeing that the primaries of the NRM was the one that ushered us into the election season. And for about a month or even more, you left and watched on as the NRM held its primaries unabated, and then when elections started, you decided to take what now some of the opposition people are, you can understand them. They are saying, why are you doing selective, selective application of the law? You arrested, you arrested Chagulanyi, Honorable Chagulanyi, you arrested Honorable Amuriat, but my friend Bebe Cool was in Arua and organizing a big gathering of locals in Arua, and you didn't even warn him. Another friend of mine called Dr. Tanga Odoi in Tororo yesterday was with border borders crowding together, no attention to social distancing, and you left them, and then you are arresting one side. Now it has put you in a situation where there is a big problem for you, a big challenge of being accused of selective application of these rules made by the ministry. How are you going to handle that disparity?
Thank you, Charles, for that observation. And yes, you're rightly, like you rightly said, it's a challenge. But that, like we are saying, but that saying or that age that two wrongs do not make a right. I wouldn't want to say, because I've not seen, I was not there to see what Baby Cool did or what Tango Doi did. But if they did so, that is not correct. That is wrong, and whoever is responsible should condemn it. If it means that they're supposed to be right, because they are individuals, they should be held responsible for that. But that does not give a leeway to the candidates whose guidelines have been set and very clear and told. Yeah, because this is we do not want to say, because this one has done this, therefore I should also do this. No. These are people who are aspiring leaders. In my opinion, they are aspiring leaders. They want a healthy population. They are the ones who must observe the law first, because they are leaders and they know what it means to be in leadership. They know what it means to lead by example. Yes, so where these rules have been stated categorically clear, because we have a task, like we are saying, we have a task to make sure Ugandans are protected. Yeah. We have a task to make sure that the laws of Uganda, or the things that have been set, or the SOPs are not flouted. We have not started during this election, to implement or to protect Ugandans, or to make sure these SOPs followed. So if we had started now, we would say why during this period. But ever since the onset of COVID, this is what we've done. And I was saying that we shall continue to do so. And this is maybe to tell the candidates that no amount of pressure or no amount of anything that is going to bar us from doing the right thing. Yes, I only tell them that it's a question of just stopping the defiance, just observe the way the NRM candidate is doing it.
Their part.
Yes, exactly. Let's do their part.
As we journalists stress you with ensuring that you go for the other one also.
Yes,
okay,
and
good.
we shall.
That's fair enough. Now, let me bring in Council Godber. Godber, from your viewpoint, as an observer, you saw what happened today. You have heard what especially the scientists have told us. The worrying painting they have just given us, based on their knowledge, based on the facts on the ground. Are you worried? Are you concerned? To what extent are you concerned about the COVID pandemic, and especially amidst an election campaign?
The panelists for some of those insightful comments. First of all, let me say that I'm worried about any issue that is of a public health nature, that any issue that is not of a public health nature, but also that actually endangers lives. So, because personally, I actually hold human life with a lot of respect, with a lot of, I think human life has to be dignified no matter what that person is, the background, socioeconomic status, and the like. Now, the challenge that we have from our professionals, both in the public service, but also in the military and in the police, is that government actually started off very well, but then almost basically, I would say almost abandoned the process along the way. Because you see, I want our viewers to understand that when we are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic or any other public health hazard, there are certain hazards that have so many dimensions. So COVID-19 has a public health dimension, it has an economic dimension, it has a political dimension. That if you are a government and you don't deal with these different dimensions, because government is so broad that it has the infrastructure in terms of the institutions, in terms of the budget, in terms of the procedures, the rules, and the laws applicable, that government is able to deal with all these dimensions at the same time. The moment, like in the case of COVID, the moment you just focus on the public health dimension and you forget the economic and then you forget the political, then you could get a crisis of confidence in what you are trying to do. So at this particular moment, and I really sympathize with my sister Flavia there, a country where we should be having the law enforcement agents of government called the Uganda Police dealing with this, because this is a law enforcement matter. The challenge that we have now is that because government has mixed up all these issues, you have the military being asked to deal with the political questions, because the questions, they are not even law enforcement questions, they are political questions. The politicians should be sitting down to resolve these matters. The moment they don't resolve them, then you have our military armed with live ammunition on the streets of our capital and other towns. And there is no doubt that the moment you get the security forces with live ammunition on the streets, everything could go wrong. Secondly, I think that we just need to be honest with ourselves. This idea of two wrongs do not make a right, I have had it every other person from the government using it. But you see, the reason that people say, how comes of over 200 people have attended public functions? I mean, very recently, we had primaries of the NRM, the ruling party. We saw people crowding in lines, unmasked, no social distancing, no even sanitization facilities. But people were able to do these elections over time and finished, and there were no disruptions. In fact, I would even believe that if the security forces tried to disrupt those NRM lines, we would even see the same levels of what we're seeing today. So we have a very, very partisan security establishment, which is pitting the government against the population. And I think that is a very bad situation that we are ending in, because at the end of the day, you are going to have people, in the case of NUP and Bobby Wine, you are having people that are jobless, people that are propertyless, people that are almost hopeless, and they will push hard, and the security people are going to be forced to respond, and we are going to have a lot of loss of life as we have had today. So I would really implore even our security officers like Flavia. I don't think that the military and the police need to go in the public flexing muscles of how we are going to finish you, we can crush you, we can do what. I think normally have a time of stepping back and dealing with the issues the way they should be. In this particular case, we are dealing with the politics. Let the politicians fix their problems. Let the president not hide behind the COVID guidelines, because standard operating procedures are standard operating procedures. They do not create laws. In this country, the only institution that has power to make laws is Parliament. Those standard operating procedures by Ministry of Health, they were never at any one moment debated in Parliament or passed. And of course, government had every opportunity to go to Parliament and enact appropriate legislation that empowers government to do the things that it would want to do. Government chose not to do it. I actually find it really an oxymoron to even keep on citing standard operating procedures as the basis for disrupting public rallies and public engagements and other functions, when the government actually has it has all the mandates to be able to go and enact a law, to be able to do the right things in the right manner. Okay. And I think government is missing it on this. And we are going to have we are having a crisis. We are losing lives. And every single life lost in this country I think is unfortunate. Let me end make one last comment and end.
20 seconds, 20 seconds.
Charles, that we are having government officials that keep on describing these young people that are protesting. They call them goons, they call them hooligans. And I'm saying, after 58 years of independence and 34 years of NRM government, we are the ones who have produced these goons and these hooligans. They are our problems, and we need to go and fix it. Keeping on screaming at them will not let the problem go away.
Okay. Afande Flavia, I will ensure that you respond to some of those comments, but allow me bring in Honorable Margaret Muhanga with Gobi, and then I come back to you to respond to those comments. Honorable Margaret, COVID and elections, and given the current scenario that they have generated, what is your take?
Honestly, Charles, I am just too scared to even make a comment. What I have heard from scientists scares me out of my skin. Even the statistics that I'm seeing on Worldometer, the way the curve is moving upwards and very fast is very scary. And the first thing I'm asking myself, why can't we take personal responsibility? Do people want to die? Can't people take responsibility for their own lives? Who are these people that run after candidates without wearing masks, without social distancing? And what is it that they want so much that is much more than their own lives? Today I watched on social media during the day and I saw what was taking place in Kampala. I said, even if someone were arrested, why would anybody's child run to the streets, take over the roads, beat up the policemen, hit them, cut them with pangas, and then the retaliation is shooting people to death? What is it so much that angers people to this level? What if you went to your home and kept quiet and waited to cast your vote for your candidate? Would you die? Why should somebody put their lives at the front line for someone else who doesn't even know them, most probably? So surely people must take personal responsibility. That is the first thing I have to talk about. Because no one was a kid on those streets. They are all above 18 and they really know what they are doing. You know, there is a saying that it takes two to tango. If people don't crowd, police will not bring tear gas. If you don't entice the crowds, they will not come where you are. I would like to commend President Museveni. I have not seen him enticing crowds where he is personally. I see the crowds wait for him on the streets. He does not stop to greet them. He does not encourage them to run around his motorcade. Because he cares for Ugandans. And I think people must now judge who wants them dead and who wants them alive. Because most candidates encourage people to run around their motorcades just to show support. But I can tell you, I have seen the deception of crowds. You can have all those crowds. The crowds I've even seen are not even a quarter of what Kizza Besigye used to have, but he has never won. Crowds are deceptive. Whether you call these crowds or not, what if you organized your meeting in Boma grounds and called only your party leaders in that district? Will everybody come? Now, my advice to the Electoral Commission, who have the mantle to whip these candidates, please recall candidates, all presidential candidates, out of this election. Recall them to Kampala, put them to order. Do not even involve the police anymore. Just ask them to quietly walk to Kampala, drive their cars to Kampala and get out of these crowds. Whether it is these presidential candidates that have caused too much attention that everybody has forgotten, there are also other lower seats that are being competed for, Parliament, LC5, and the rest. Are they also calling such crowds? Should anybody really do this in the wake of COVID? I have had so many burials here in Fort Portal of people dying from COVID. And people come in large numbers, no masks. Even where there is a roadblock that please wash your hands, you won't enter without a mask. They get inside, take off the masks. Isn't this personal responsibility? Should the police even ask you to wear your mask? Should the police police you for your own personal life? Now, we have opened churches, we have opened schools, Burials, the numbers are growing. Weddings are getting bigger. What will happen in the next 3 months? Should we wait for everybody to get COVID, die, or live within their homes? Because I tweeted last week, we wanted to have some people checked for COVID, and they were sick. And I called the regional referral hospital in Fort Portal, and they had no testing kits. I tried to call up people in health, no one was picking my calls. I decided to tweet it and copy in everybody responsible. Nonetheless, I called the district task force, and they had some testing kits, and they had 12 people checked. And indeed, some were positive. And now they are being treated from their homes because the regional referral hospital is full. Dr. Diana has stated that the health services are overstretched. People who have other diseases are still there and they need hospitalization. The COVID wards are full all over the country. There is no enough oxygen. Why would somebody run to where they think their lives are at stake?
Okay.
Why should somebody who has tested positive insist they are not positive? I have seen this happen here in Fort Portal. The results come and somebody is told you are positive and they insist they have no COVID just because they are asymptomatic. Now, how many other people are they giving COVID?
Okay, Margaret.
We really need to crack the whip. I don't know who, but the EC must recall these presidential candidates. We can't continue with this kind of life.
Okay,
no.
Great point there. Crack the whip. Electoral
because
Commission.
Even the police will run out
Electoral Commission must act. Good recommendation there. Gobi, Mr. Gobi, are you online?
Yes, Charles, I'm good here.
Good. Starting with the point of the scientists, Dr. Diana and Professor Rhoda painting a bleak future and warning that every family must brace for tougher times in the next 1-2 months. Your view, including on what you saw happening today in the politics.
Charles, the information from the scientists is very scary, but not surprising. Because, as you know, we've been discussing this for a number of weeks now on this show. And the countries around the world are reporting a resurgence in cases of COVID. I've been looking at the numbers in the US because I was more interested in the US because they have just had an election like us. And now the average daily deaths have increased to over 850 number of people dying daily in the US. And they are attributing this mainly to the election they have just had. When you come home, already Dr. Diana and the professor have told us our situation. And really, we are overburdening them because they have been telling us since the days when we had these lockdown. We know their faces very well. But the challenge in Uganda in particular and in Africa, we do not listen to science. We don't listen to scientists. Everybody thinks that they are very clever. We have here a culture of poverty. I usually call it a culture of poverty because in economics we have that concept where we create a subculture where people think that whatever lives they are living, they are supposed to be that way. They don't want to listen to anyone from outside their kind of space. Like Professor Rhoda has indicated to us, we have gone back to almost our normal lives. I see people partying at the funerals, people attending in big numbers. They are hugging, they are crying on each other. We have gone back to churches and mosques. the bars are full, much as the president didn't reopen them. People are now even no longer passing behind the back doors. I have a bar here where I pass as I come home. I think even now, maybe today it will be an exception because of the crisis in town. I usually pass there when I'm coming back from this show at midnight, and there are cars on the roadside. People are drinking. So I think the enforcement of the SOPs has been a problem. I know that children, okay, we are not children Ugandans, like the president said that, why should I bother with the adults? Are you kids? And this is a matter of life and death. I think really the president needs to reconsider this and enforce the SOPs universally on everybody and ensure that we do not enter into that crisis, because experts had predicted actually, and I can see they were right, that Africa will have COVID late, but they will have the most devastation than even those countries we have looked at, because of the situation we have here in terms of our ability to attend to the patients. So I think even without elections, it was going to be a tall order for us to avoid the crisis we are seeing now. When you see downtown Kampala, the kind of lives people are living, it's as if COVID left the country, or we got a vaccination or a cure for it. Now, back to the politics. I think most of the candidates, especially at the presidential level, except the incumbent and maybe Mr. Mao, are first-time candidates. And therefore, there is excitement in that. And the only way they can get this excitement served is by having crowds around them. And you know, politics, particularly elections, are emotive. And when you see the kind of candidates we have, the age bracket in which they fall, the excitement which comes with this support around them has made them completely disregard the danger which is likely to come out of this COVID. And as a result of that, you find that even the voters themselves, who are first-time voters, the very younger people, they don't listen to the likes of Professor Roda. They say, these professors, what are they talking about? COVID is not for us. For us, we are going to support our candidates. We are going to have rallies. And at the beginning, the camp in yellow messed it up, as Godiba said, in the primaries of their party. And they sent a wrong kind of message. And somehow the president tried to correct it when he started his own campaign, very scientific. You can't get near him when you're not tested. You can't get in his camp when you don't have a mask, when you are not seated in a certain seat and well, you know, social distanced and so on. But then, over time, I think, out of panic, the party leadership thought that because Bobi Wine was pulling crowds, they should also do the same. So I saw people like the Cool and others going and mobilizing crowds as well. And this has made it very difficult for the security organs to enforce these SOPs. I think what happened today is very, very unfortunate, because the security agencies were doing their job of ensuring that they can enforce these SOPs on people who have deliberately, and I think Godiba also needs to be a bit fair here, because some of these candidates have come out openly to say, I am going to defy any of these rules or guidelines you are giving us, Electoral Commission and police. We are going to have our rallies. We are going to have our processions. I saw one of the candidates when the AC chairperson was reading for them the guidelines after nomination. He was laughing, and his team, and they were actually just shrugging off the Electoral Commission. So I think this election came at a wrong time. Perhaps we should have postponed it. I don't know whether the sky would have come down. Somehow I see now everybody is saying maybe we should have postponed it, but trust me, I'm not God. But some people would have again said that you are postponing it because you are fearing us. So either way, you don't win this situation. But since it's a matter of life and death, COVID is here, is real, people are going to die. We need really to enforce these SOPs without favor or fear, no more selective enforcement of them, ensure that this defiance by candidates is stopped, but also those who are supporting NRM must be whipped in line to ensure that they also abide by the guidelines given. And I think in life, it's what we do, and also in whatever we are doing, we need to be seen to be fair and just.
Okay.
Me, I think the same enforcement done on those who are defying the rules should be equal and fair and just, all of them. So they should call, like I think Honorable Muhanga said, they should call all these candidates and read to them the new rules, all of them, and whoever violates them, police should act without any favor, because now we are in the middle of the campaign, we can't easily stop it, and enforce these and ensure that we have an election where people are not, their lives are not in danger, but also those other things like parties must be stopped. I don't know how much tear gas we are going to buy, and also how many batons and the cells where they are going to keep people. But Ugandans, it's not about indiscipline, it's a culture of poverty, which we must deal with and ensure that we become really a nation where we can be responsible and keep our people alive. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gobi. Very important points there made, including the recommendation. When we come back from the break, I'm going to ask Dr. Diana, being in charge of Ministry of Health, together with Professor, whether for a start, there are things they mentioned that I think can be dealt away with. For example, feeding at serving food, mass serving of food at a funeral, at a wedding. If it is one of the drivers, why can't it be stopped? Why can't it be suspended if it is one of the major drivers? So we need to get back to some of those recommendations and look at them and ask the scientists that are discussing for us here, sharing their knowledge with us, and to get what can be practically done to help the country at this stage. This show is being broadcast live on Magic 100 FM as well, but it is also online on YouTube. You can follow it on UBC TV, that's on Facebook. It is also on YouTube, it is on UBC Television Uganda. UBC Television Uganda, that's on YouTube. But on Facebook, it is on UBC TV. You can follow on all those platforms, but there is also the hashtag for Behind the Headlines. It is hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. You can leave for us your question or comment there to continue with the discussion, even when we come back from the break. Let's take a break right now, a short break, and then when we come back, we will continue with the discussions, with the responses to some of the issues that have been raised in the discussion that has just ended. Let's break now.
The Electoral Commission has appointed the period indicated in the table below for the purpose of conducting candidates' campaign meetings for presidential, parliamentary and local government council elections 2021. Presidential elections start 9th November 2020 and end 12th January 2021. Parliamentary elections for directly elected MPs and district woman representatives to Parliament start 9th November 2020 and end 12th January 2021. City, district, local government councils, Lord Mayor, mayors, chairpersons and councillors start 9th November 2020 and end 18th January 2021. Municipality, city division chairpersons and councillors start 9th November 2020 and end 23rd January 2021. Sub-county, town, municipal division chairpersons and councillors start 9th November 2020 and end on the 1st of February 2021. The Electoral Commission urges all political parties and organizations, candidates and their agents, supporters and the general public to carefully observe the guidelines of this campaign period, as persons attending campaign meetings shall be required to comply with the guidelines issued by the Electoral Commission in accordance with the Government of Uganda and Ministry of Health measures against the spread of COVID-19. This includes observing social distancing, hand washing, and wearing of masks.
COVID-19 has disrupted education and learning of more than 15 million children in Uganda and about 1.6 billion globally. To reimagine the future of learning, we need to work together to ensure that Ugandan children continue to access education for a better future. Join us on Friday, 20th November, World Children's Day, a day for children, by children, as we reimagine the future of learning on a roundtable discussion from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. The event will be live on UBC TV and on its social media platforms. The panelists will include Shamil Mochibi, Raheja, 15 years, Senior 1, Kololo Secondary School; Gashaija Bella Nelly, 14 years, Primary 7, Nachivo Blue Primary School; Haj Abi Bosa Musoke, Ministry of Education and Sports; Dr. Charles Tony Mukasa Lusambu, Ministry of Education and Sports; Dr. Kelo Ayan Daniel, Kampala Capital City Authority; Rosemary Rugamba Rwanyange, UNICEF Uganda; and Mr. Francis Chisirinya, Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Brought to you by UNICEF in partnership with Ministry of Education and Sports and the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda.
Welcome back from the break. This is Behind the Headlines. The discussion is on UBC TV. That's on Facebook. It is also on YouTube, UBC Television. Through YouTube, you can access it. But it's also broadcasting live on Magic 100 FM, as well as on hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. And the topic we are discussing, we are looking at the security situation in the country, but most importantly, campaigns amidst COVID-19. Is Uganda set for elections and the challenges that come with that election? To discuss this, we are into our second segment, our second and last segment. We have, an illustrious team. We have in the studio here Dr. Diana Atwine, the Permanent Secretary in Ministry of Health. We have Brigadier Flavia Biekwaso, UPDF spokesperson. But joining us through Zoom, we have from different parts of Uganda, we have Counsel Godba Tumushabe, who is a lawyer and policy analyst, is joining us from Nigeria. We have Professor Rhoda Wanyenze, who is a professor and dean of Makerere University School of Public Health. We have the panel members of this show, Ramadan Gobi, who is joining us from Mutungo, and Honorable Margaret Muhanga, who is joining us from Fort Portal. Someone viewing sent a message. He's called Isaiah. He says, Charles, Honorable Margaret is giving an excuse of COVID because in Parliament, MPs called for suspension of campaigns. Isaiah, Honorable Margaret, Isaiah is accusing you of being one of those MPs who supported the campaign, among others, and that therefore this should not be made an excuse. And Isaiah is accusing Electoral Commission of applying the law differently, and that is the cause of what we are now seeing. That's what Isaiah is saying. I'm going to get more comments, and then I will be, and then another person, Ronald, is saying, Charles, we also need to hear about the state of our hospitals. Can the PS tell us, do we have enough stocks of PPEs? This must be personal protective equipment, as it is referred to. And then ask so Dr. Diana, you will need to start with us on that. And then ask the professor about the progress of the vaccine. Professor, you will tell us about the progress of the vaccine. There was breaking news, I think within this week or last week, from Pfizer, and then another which was about 90% assurance, and then the other one that came on Monday of about 94.5. Tell us more about that. And then also the vaccine that you were working on, that the president talked about, that our scientists were working on. So Ronald is asking that you should tell us about those as well. There are a number of comments that have been sent. I'm going to first sieve them through and then summarize them. Many of them are rather long, and we need to summarize them. But before I bring in Dr. Diana to start us on the state of our hospitals and going forward, what you think you will do as Ministry of Health. Afande Biekwaso, you were challenged by Godba especially on applying the law differently, and that it shouldn't be the business of the military to be running after SOPs. That's not supposed to be your business. And then Ramadan saying that you must apply as security, you must in any case apply the law, evenly, justly and fairly across board without fear or favor, as he referred to it. Respond to that in a minute, and then I bring in Diana.
Of Mr. Gobi, that the law must be applied evenly, it must be applied without fear or favor, and it must not be discriminatory, it must not be selective. And actually, like we are saying, no one is above the law. NRM, NOP, any other person, we are all Ugandans, and we must all be seen, treated fairly in front of the law. That one I agree with, and I totally agree, and with that one, that's what we do. That's what we do every other time. We are talking about, to me, we are talking about two different scenarios, because they brought in the other people and these ones. And this one, I would say that, to me, it's like you have two games. 2 sets of games, but each game has had its own rules. So you're not going to be judged. These ones, the candidates, for example, who have been told and what they have been told by the Electoral Commission and what we are trying to enforce, is a different game from the other persons. So in that aspect, I would say that these people came into this game knowing, I mean the candidates, they were given a pitch, they were set their rules as it happens in games, and if they break those rules, they'll have brought themselves in the hands of the law. The professor, remind me about the professor.
About the professor was the one who referred to Gobi, who referred to the rule being applied evenly without fear or favor. Gobi, the other one is counsel. Of course, he's also a professor at a university law school, who is saying that the military must not involve itself in businesses of chasing after SOPs.
We have to, for as long as anything.
So perhaps explain for us why you decided to, you intervened in the matter of politics today.
We did not intervene in the matter of politics today, but we intervened in a security situation where you had the country, in different parts of the country, where you're getting riots. I think when people are rioting, that's not politics, but people are breaking the order of peace in the country, and the only persons that are responsible to make sure there is peace and stability are we. So we cannot sit back. We do not mind what yes, there is the other political side, but for us, we are seeing as much as how far it weighs on and it impacts on the security of the country, on the stability, and on the peace and stability of the country. Remember, I told you that we have a responsibility. Part of our mandate is to make sure that we preserve the integrity, the interior. Whereas you are responsible for the territorial integrity of the country, but you are also responsible for the interior integrity of the country. And that means that we have to keep the country intact. We have to keep the population intact. We have to make sure everything is in order and intact for the country to move on. This is a period of, I think, 3 or 4 months. We do not want to pass through 3 months but leave the country in tatters. No, that one we cannot allow. Why he's saying that we have to follow the SOPs? Yes, we are going to follow the SOPs for as long as it involves the safety of Ugandans, for as long as the lives of Ugandans is at threat, and you are responsible for that. So from whatever angle you want to look at it, we have to come in. One, you would have said primarily it would have been the police. But this is a period where the whole country is deployed. You have a few number, of course, we know the strength of the police. You cannot let it alone. And we are obliged, whoever says that we are not responsible or we shouldn't come into this is lying, because part of the Constitution says we shall aid civil authorities in whatever situation they call us. So we shall be there. Some Ugandans may not want to see us there, but it is our mandate and our responsibility, and we shall fulfill it. Okay.
Dr. Diana, the question of the state of the hospitals, and then there were a number of things that were raised. Do you have the number of our vulnerable in the country, perhaps to inform our young people, to alert them to how much the potential of damage could be? Do we have that? People who are suffering from the combined number of people who are suffering with cancers, diabetes, the aged, and with other, respiratory diseases. Have you put them together for us to know the extent of the potential damage that could be done to these people?
Thank you, Charles. Yes, we know that up to 30% of our population suffer from high blood pressure.
30%?
Yes.
Of the entire population?
Yes.
Of about 42?
But unfortunately, the majority of the people do not know that they have high blood pressure because they never go to the hospital, they never go for checkup. Even the same number are diabetic or pre-diabetic, meaning they have oscillating high blood sugar, and then at one time they tip over to full diabetes. And unfortunately, the majority of those don't know that they have those conditions. We have heart diseases, we have malnutrition. People who take alcohol, people who smoke, those chain smokers.
So even people who take alcohol are vulnerable? Oh
yes, they do. Because you find that especially those chronic alcoholics, they have deficiencies in the vitamins, and they are prone also to getting severe infection. But also we have other people who suffer from chronic airway obstructive diseases. We have those that have cancers that are undergoing treatment. I don't have the statistics, but I want to tell you that the number is big. Then we have also, they may not be sick per se, but they are old, they are weak. All those are part of the vulnerable groups that we have. Now, someone will say, I am young, I am okay, I will not die. But as Professor Roda said, if one gets COVID and takes it to a friend, and the friend will have someone vulnerable at home, somehow the chain continues. So it may not be directly that you will cause that person to suffer, but through your contacts, other vulnerable people will get infected, and therefore they have a high chance of dying or getting severe diseases with sequelae. Then also, I just want to talk about the status of our hospitals. You know that according to our structure of hospital structures, we have national referral hospitals, regional referral hospitals, general hospitals, health center 4s and 3 and 2s. But we chose to treat COVID patients at regional referral hospitals because we wanted to free the other lower units to take care of the other diseases, because the majority of our patients are attended at lower units. But what we are seeing now is that the numbers are more, and we are seeing that we are running out of space. That's why we had to create other auxiliary spaces like Nambole, where we are treating our patients from. We have increased bed capacity, for example, in Mulago and in Entebbe. But when we continue this trend, definitely the trajectory is not so favorable for us. And therefore, no matter how much we have prepared, no matter how many equipment we have put in our hospitals, still the numbers will outweigh the existing infrastructure. You asked whether we have the PPEs. Every time a doctor or nurse, a cleaner, anyone who is working around the COVID is putting on the PPE, and that PPE is discarded, and after lunch they put on. So this is a consumptive process. We continue buying PPEs. Right now we have PPEs, but I cannot tell in the next one week or two. We keep on projecting and getting more PPEs. That's why I'm saying that if we continue getting these numbers, and that means we are going to, right now at the regional referral hospitals, we are setting up another auxiliary center where we have to put equipment, where we have to put beds, we have to put everything that supports patient care. And that is, now we are creating another extra 120 bed space for each hospital. in all the regions. Now, that means that then we are diverting money from other things that would be treating to take care of those numbers. That's why from the beginning I said that we cannot relax, because this has a big implication on our resources, big implication on the numbers that are managed in our hospitals, and it has an implication even on the risks to our health workers. So yes, we prepared, and we continue to prepare as the numbers swell up, but I can assure you, I have seen even developed countries where they have all the resources and they have put billions of dollars in these responses, but still they run out of space, they run out of equipment, they run out of things to use. So the best, really, the message I would want still to emphasize is that it takes personal responsibility. We just need to be responsible as citizens, as parents, as children, as the youth, as elite. We simply have to be responsible to take charge of our lives. Even all these things that we are talking about, chikubo, wedding, funerals, it is very difficult for everyone to be policed like they are children. It's very difficult. We just have to have that right mindset that our health is in our hands. Whatever we want to do with our health, it is all about us making decisions to make sure that we reduce the chance of infection. No one will enforce, even if police, they will not deploy police on functions, they will not deploy police on the funerals, they will not. It is very difficult. Yet most of these activities are going to continue because this is the new normal. We just have to learn to live in the new normal. But how we learn to live in the new normal, it has a lot to do with how we adjust our lifestyle, how we adjust how we have been doing things, and now we keep on reminding ourselves that the infection is real, and therefore everyone has a duty to protect their loved ones, and most importantly, the most vulnerable in our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Diana. Let me bring in Professor. There was a question which was asked in your direction, the progress of the vaccine from the Ugandan perspective, but also from the global, coming from the global perspective. Where are we at? Professor Roda?
There's been a lot of... Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, very
Hello?
clearly.
Okay, excellent. So Charles, for the vaccines, there's been a lot of progress, much faster than we expected. We have not had this kind of response in terms of a race for a vaccine, the absolute numbers of vaccines in the pipeline, as well as the pace. It's really been a pleasant surprise for us that we have vaccines whose efficacy has been demonstrated even before the end of this year with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. But we also have so many other candidates in the pipeline, including one that our Uganda Virus Research Institute will be testing together with the Imperial College London. So there are many others in the pipeline that are being tested across the world. And hopefully we will have many more. And we need them because the demand is huge. We need to be able to rapidly manufacture these and be able to deploy them across the world. I would say that this is really excellent news, but we also need to temper our expectations because there are billions of people that need these vaccines across the world. So it takes a bit of time to develop the volumes that we need for the countries that are manufacturing as well as the rest of us. across the world. And it will also take time for us to quickly tighten our systems to be able to distribute them across all the countries, and most likely starting with the most vulnerable people and the most high risk, like the healthcare workers, to make sure that they are protected. So it will be a while before this is widely available to all of us. And I would say I would be surprised if we have this widely available to us by mid next year, because it takes a time to ramp up the production across the world before we can get this to everyone. So we need to hang in there with our masks and everything else that we can do so that we can keep ourselves safe as we hope for the vaccine to come. We've had quite a number of questions about the Ugandan vaccine and when it's coming. And I need to say that we have good scientists in Uganda, and they are working very hard. But to be able to produce a vaccine this quickly, one needs to have had investments in the infrastructure and the systems for its production for quite some time. You don't just wake up and put in the investment today and you have a vaccine as quickly as Pfizer and Moderna have done. Companies that have had these investments for many, many years and producing other vaccines as well. So we will get there, and we need to continue to invest and support these systems and nurture them so that even if we don't get one for COVID as quickly as we might have wanted, at least we can do so for future pathogens, because this is an ongoing process, and we need to make sure that we have our own mechanisms to develop them. If there's anything COVID has shown us, is that you have to have your own very well developed, because even just getting the test kits across the world is not as easy. So even if we don't get it quickly, let's hang in there, let's put the investments consistently and be able to support the scientists to move these technologies forward. So, but otherwise, in the meantime, we need to stick with the prevention. Let's hang in there so that the vaccines can get us alive. Personal responsibility and making sure that we protect ourselves and those around us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Professor. Councillor Godber, a little bit away from the politics, do you think that the Electoral Commission or whoever took the decision for Uganda to go into the campaigns created the bigger problem that we are now seeing, that is COVID? Do you think that would you risk recommending that the elections should be called off, or you think that COVID is something that we must learn to live with?
No, actually, that's just that your question doesn't step out from the politics. It talks about the politics themselves, because because I don't know what language one would use to explain that the crisis that we are seeing today is not a crisis about COVID and SOPs. It is a political crisis. We are dealing with a political question. COVID happens to be here at this time, because you see the violence that we are seeing from the protests, or the people who are protesting, and the violence we are seeing from from our security forces is not new. We have had, you remember, during the time of the amendment of the Constitution to remove age limit, the security forces, both the military and the police, were all over the country, disrupting meetings, including civic meetings that were where people were consulting on the amendment of the Constitution. So that's not something new. The onslaught on Bobi Wine's activities is not new. The many times we have seen the military, and particularly the military police, stopping Bobi's concerts. There was no COVID. So I want us, I don't think the biggest we see for us as a country, we keep on living a lie, and we find explanations to explain why we should live that lie. So the disruptions we are seeing about political activities has nothing to do with COVID, because if you were managing this public health crisis, it is not a crisis where you have to deploy the military with live ammunition. No, it's first of all, you want to start with education, which the Minister of Education, Minister of Health actually does very well. That you want to encourage people, even for us as lawyers, we always focus when we are enacting legislation. We always try to inbuild those measures that induce voluntary compliance. And I think several of the panelists talked about this, about personal responsibility. Personal responsibility is not forced. You don't come to some responsibility. Personal responsibility is induced through education, through encouraging people to understand that there is a problem and advising them on what to do, and then they make that decision. But as long as as long as people perceive a certain level of unfairness, and just to get back to your point, that the Electoral Commission is considered the most unfair institution in as far as our politics is concerned. The confidence levels of the Electoral Commission are below 50%. Every opinion poll that has been conducted has established that it's about 40–45% of the population who trust the Electoral Commission, so nobody trusts it. Secondly, if you choose to do scientific elections, then you don't just do it the way the Electoral Commission has done it, because I think it's Ramadan who mentioned that quite a good number of candidates, they are first-time candidates. They have not met their voters. You can't wake up and tell them, you go and meet some 50 people or 100 people in a district, and then you are campaigning. But later on, because in the previous elections, we've been having even campaigns for about up to 3 months. You are here as a government saying that you need to do scientific campaigns, use the radios and social media and smaller meetings, and then you are saying do a meeting in less than 2 months to cover 145 districts. You see, that inherent unfairness in the process is basically what is creating the crisis that we are having. That's why I was saying actually that the army, the UPDF, this is not their business. They are coming in because they are dealing with the crisis. In a normal situation, they would not need to come in. For your information, yeah. the military, the UPDF is established under the Constitution. Its role, it has 2 major functions, very, very clearly defined: protecting the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the state of Uganda. This idea of the interior is something that I think you have just added, which does not apply as far as the mandate of the UPDF is concerned, because the job of law enforcement is the job of the police. And I think what we should be doing is be able to say, oh, we need to equip the police to be able to do its job of policing, the policing work, where you're dealing with civilians, where you're dealing with community policing. But the idea that you are going to deploy the military with the back, because to be honest, a country where you have the capital city or any of the major towns almost appearing like war zones, I think in progress, because that's not the peace and security that is envisaged. I'm pretty sure that when the president talks about peace and security, he's not talking about some kind of military occupation, because you can have the military come and make the whole of this country a very big prison where everybody cannot do anything or say anything. So the Electoral Commission is one incompetent organization that cannot organize a free and fair election. So let me put it clearly that, to me, and this is my personal opinion, that what we're involved in as a campaign and election is just a fraud. And you remember even the president that in one of his addresses, where actually it was an interview, I think a media interview, where he said, for us to organize elections during COVID or during this pandemic, that it would just be mad. And I think probably he has come to be right, that what you see around now is madness coming up and catching up with us. And in short, if we are not able to organize ourselves as a country and have a credible, free and fair election where the life of our people is not endangered, where there is no injustice perpetuated by the state agencies, then that election should not even happen, because that's not the alpha and omega. And in any case, there are instruments inbuilt within our constitution to deal with this kind of situation, whether you can declare a state of emergency, or the president can even convene these politicians and say, let's figure out how to move forward as a country, instead of just going to fight it out on the streets. Because if we are civilized people, it doesn't matter, because one side of the political equation has the training, it has the equipment, it has the lethal weapons. The other side of the political equation is coming on the streets with stones and with crude weaponry. I saw the if there's anything that threatened me, I think as Margaret said, what scared me is the level of determination I saw with those young men. Someone approaching a police officer, uniformed, and trying to hit that police officer, which I think he even did successfully. Another young man climbing on a billboard of President Museveni's poster, just trying to destroy it. That level of determination can only tell you that we are going to lose lives. And I can tell you, whether the military is able to subdue the population, the mere fact that in the process they kill one person and another one and another one. This country has seen a lot of death for the last 58 years of independence, and this is not the time we should be even flexing muscles and say, oh, we will control them, we'll contain them, because every time President Museveni talks, he says, oh, those ones who are going to bring fujo, we'll deal with them. But